Welcome to the Care Right podcast, your go-to resource for all things elder care. Guiding us through this journey is Annalee Kruger, the founder of Care Right Incorporated, and she has been steadfastly supporting families across the United States. Each episode brings you expert insights, innovative strategies, and practical advice, ensuring that you're well equipped to provide the best possible care for your loved ones. Expect to gain valuable knowledge, learn from real-life stories, and get inspired to take action in your own caregiving journey. So buckle up as we dive into an in-depth discussion of elder care planning and together embrace the journey of caring for aging loved ones on the Care Right podcast.
Hi, everyone. I am Annalee Kruger, the owner of Care Right Incorporated. We work with families all across the country who are typically family caregivers to aging loved ones, and they're starting to either see the writing on the wall with mom and dad that maybe they're falling, parents are losing weight, they're in and out of the ER, urinary tract infections or memory impairment issues, or caregiver burnout issues. And so we work with families, whether they're in the proactive planning pace or whether they're already in full-blown crisis and they're overwhelmed, they're burned out, and they don't know what to do now to help take care of mom and dad. So we work with families all across the country. We facilitate your family meetings, find out what's working well, what's not working well, what are the goals, what are the resources, how are you as a family holding up? What do you want to take off of your caregiver plate? And we can outsource with a service organization that can do those types of services that you need. What are the gaps in your planning? And even though mom and dad will almost always say they want to age in place at home, we educate you as a family about what does that really look like, the pros and cons of aging in place, how much can you expect to spend, because home care is very expensive and Medicare does not pay for that. Just being real clear on that so people make smart decisions instead of decisions off of assumptions and misinformation. We also, because we know that it's unlikely that most people can age in place at home, we need to have that backup plan or plan B. Or what if mom is the caregiver to dad with dementia, mom dies or has a stroke and now she's not able to go back home? What do we do now? So we do what's called a care matrix with our families, and we usually do about 30 to 40 care matrix projects a week for families across the country, where we'll say, where does it make sense for mom and dad to live? Hopefully mom and dad can participate in this aging plan because it's their aging plan, but sometimes they're in the hospital or they're too demented or they've had a major stroke and they now no longer have a say in what happens to them or where they go. So sometimes I'm just working with the adult kids. But we do this care matrix where we do all the market research of the different care options, care communities. What's the waiting list? Do they allow cameras? If mom has a dog, do they allow the dog? How much does it cost? How sick can you be and still stay in these different levels of care? All of that market research so that you don't, as an adult kid, spend even more time just blindly touring facilities because you don't know what you don't know. This way, it's a done for you project, and we walk you through different care options and educate you. Then we provide you with education about what to look for, what to ask about when you're doing the tours, how to interview home care companies. So it's a very comprehensive concierge style of business model, and you can either do a la carte services, or I strongly recommend the full comprehensive aging plan package with ongoing care management, family meetings, and care advocacy. So it's a kind of a one-stop shop. Part of what we do is identify gaps in your planning, and most families have a significant amount of gaps in their planning, whether it's their estate documents or they didn't, get their long-term care insurance, or they don't have their funeral arrangements taken care of, those types of gaps. And so part of that value proposition is we have a trusted network of professionals all across the country. And that way we can make referrals to these professionals that we've already vetted, and no money changes hands. So there's no skin in the game for us. It's just that we know that these people will do a good job with our clients. And that leads me to why Marcia is here. So Miss Marcia Mantell is our Social Security and Medicare specialist. She is a hoot. We've known each other for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ish
At
for
least, yes.
but you'll see on this podcast, on this interview, that we are just this like little bundle of energy and just really fun to work with. So Miss Marcia, can you take it from here? Who are you? What do you do? And then we'll jump in.
Oh, Annalee, thank you. Yes, I would be happy to take it for a moment. And you do a lot. Let me just start by saying that, the level of detail you get into. Will the place take your mom's dog? I think that says it all about the service you provide.
Yeah.
So thank you for doing that for these families. I come in hopefully before any crisis comes into the equation, and I do a lot on retirement income planning. So maybe it's really the adult kids at this point. It's us, it's the boomers, it's the Gen Xers. How do we get ready knowing we've got parents that are going to need some care?
Yep.
What can we do? What do we need to be thinking about? How do we think about quitting our jobs? And then when to claim Social Security, where Medicare fits in. And I also have written several books like you, and I've been a blogger for about, oh gosh, it's like 12 years now. And mostly I just love everything about the whole planning process for retirement. And I try to help people be more successful there.
Well, and it's so important what you do for a lot of different reasons. But one reason is because when you think about who calls care right, it's always the adult kids, right? It's not ever mom and dad, because mom and dad are doing okay because it's to the, but it's to the, it's to the risk of the adult kids. It's the adult kids providing the assisted living. And we have a lot of families in the sandwich generation. And then we also have a lot of daughters or sons who are like kind of nearing that pre-retirement. I want to retire in the next 5-10 years. What does that look like? And then if they get, they get that crisis call that dad had a stroke, then all this stuff that you do kind of gets put by the wayside, and they don't always make the most informed decisions because they don't know what they don't know, or they have so much else going on that they just can't focus on one thing and button it up.
Yeah, the time to think about your own retirement is not when mom and dad have had a crisis.
Correct.
You need to have, like, there's just kind of nothing worse than that. You're trying to hang on to your job, deal with your own, younger kids if you have children, and now you've got to figure out, the healthcare system in America, which is, let's call it challenging, shall we? So trying to figure out your own and level, get a baseline established for what do you think you're going to do for retirement? And so one of the big ahas for many people is, I think it's really important that you do your baseline plan when you're 50. And I get a lot of pushback, right? It's like, 50, that's so young. Well, in the words of my younger daughter, that's halfway to 100. So it's actually not as young as you think it is. And it's really important because by 50, you're sort of already thinking, like, oh, is retirement in my future here? And all of a sudden your runway went from being 25 or 30 years long to being like, oh, maybe 5 or 10 or 15 years long.
Mhm.
And if you haven't done enough for retirement, both in planning what you're going to do and what you want out of those golden years, and if you haven't saved enough, you can't figure that out at 62. Like, there's
Right.
no runway left, virtually. You can do a little bit, but it's really important to know this stuff at 50. So lay it out once, and maybe at 50, mom and dad are still healthy, so we don't have to worry about that. But it's funny, I have a plan B also, Annalise. So I love that you have your plan B. So, and I'm assuming your plan A is the ideal state, right? Everyone stays healthy and then they very quietly pass in the night. Well, we should all be so lucky, but that never happens.
Correct.
So my plan B is, laying out, what do you want retirement to look like? And people don't know. Like, well,
Mhm.
I've never thought about it. So it's this opportunity to think about it. But my plan B is, what if something goes really great? What if you all of a sudden, win the lottery, or great uncle Benny dies and you inherit $1 million? Those positive things, because I like to keep things a little positive. But I also have a plan C.
Mhm.
And plan C is, what if something bad happens? It's not defined. I'm not wishing ill on anyone, but, I've been married for a long time to Dan. What if Dan gets sick? So first look at your own close, level family, your immediate family. If Dan gets sick, if I get sick, holy mackerel, Dan won't survive, by the way, if I die first. We've already established that in our household. So, even to think about that and to kind of make it funny, because otherwise it's really sad. But it could also be that parents need something, and you just don't know what's going to hit you. And will that afford you the opportunity to stay working, or do you have to quit your job? So if you're quitting your job 5 years before you thought you would, but you needed those 5 years to have enough money for your next 30.
Yep.
Well, so it's almost like, a domino, right? And I'm sure you see this too. It's this domino effect. You thought you had a plan, and then one domino falls, and you're there watching them all fall. And you're the one, who's really kind of, well, screwed.
Right.
If you're not prepared for something will happen.
That's
you don't need to know what it is, but it's something. And then when it's a health crisis, call 1-800-ANNA-LEE. So that's what I would recommend.
And with my clients who calls me, like I said, is the adult kids, and they might be in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, right? And so I can't tell you how many daughters and sons I've had on Zoom say, I wasn't planning on retirement. I ended up having to retire so I could take care of mom because she had a stroke. Yeah. And we promised her we'd never put her in a nursing home. Well, then they find out, so they quit their job. Now they find out they're in way over their head. They're not nurses. They're not doctors. Maybe mom wasn't the best mom. And now they're like, oh my gosh, I did not think this through. And they're in over their head. What's their exit strategy? How am I going to make more money? It's pretty hard to get hired when you're 50 or 60 or 70 at the revenue income level that they were used to.
I would say it's impossible.
Yes.
There are 10 people where that worked, but for everyone else, there's no employer out there who wants an older worker and is going to pay them top dollar. I mean, that's just not realistic. And again, this goes back to me at 50, sit down with that plan. What if, and it's not always, a health issue, but what if the employer shows you the door at 62, but you were going to work until 67 or 70? Well, now you're not. Now what? What does that look like? And it's both an opportunity and a real curse, because now if you don't understand Social Security, and I run into the same things you're talking about, these misunderstandings and these myths and misperceptions. My cousin Charlie told me, well, I'm sure cousin Charlie is lovely, but he does not know Social Security. You don't realize the mistakes you're making, and they have such.
Well, and cousin Charlie or neighbor Joe, because a lot of mine will say, well, my neighbor did this with their mom. And I'm like, but their situations and variables were completely different than yours.
Completely. Absolutely, positively different. And it's funny because, as you know, I work with financial advisors as well to help them with their clients and their client situations. And a lot of times financial advisors, like anyone who has an expertise in something else, but then touches these periphery planning cases, they just want, a rule of thumb. Like, okay, so Marcia, is the rule of thumb like the lower earner can always grab Social Security at 62 and the higher earner should wait till 70? My answer is always no. And I don't even go with it depends anymore, Annalie, because that's actually the answer. But it's like, no, you cannot have a rule of thumb like that. There are too many other pieces to the equation. Yeah. And so we can't have these broad, everyone should do this or everyone should do that. It's that everyone should do a plan that I'll agree with. And everyone's situation is different. And I don't care what neighbor Joe was doing. It will have nothing to do with what neighbor Sally needs.
That's right.
So it is just... It's crazy. It's crazy out there. All these authorities out there.
Oh, and that's the other thing I wanted us to talk about too is the misinformation. We should have hit the record. I should have hit the record button when you and I first started our call earlier today, like an hour ago, because that could have been the podcast right there. Because there's just so much misinformation out there on the internet. And for those that are listening, the internet's only going to get you so far. Google is only going to get you so far. It's not going to show you the nuances of your particular situation, your customized situation. So and Marcia and I were talking earlier about, because so many of my clients come to us in crisis and they just are so utterly misinformed. They think Medicare and Medicaid are going to pay for everything, or they think they're the same program. They use them interchangeably, or the families will say, assisted living and nursing home in the same sentence, as if it's the exact same level of care, as if they're synonyms, and they are not. And so you can't expect someone to make smart decisions when they're making decisions off of wrong information. And that's why there's value in working with a professional to help you navigate all of the nuances and the ins and outs of your particular variables, so that you have the right plan for plan A, B, and plan C, in case like everything goes sideways, you've got coverage.
Yeah, I see it in virtually everything on the retirement side. So, I think of retirement as we've been doing this climb up the mountain. This is our accumulation era, right? It's 30 years long. You've been saving in your 401k or 403b, and you get to the top. It's like, oh, I can retire now. Well, now you have to start the descent.
Yeah.
And it's on that sliding on your butt on the way down is where you hit all the rocks. And it hurts.
It doesn't feel
good. It really doesn't. And it's because we don't even know, not only the things we don't know, the things that we do know. So I'll take inflation, for example. Inflation is really, really bad, right? So if you read everything today, this is terrible. We've had, these 2 years of, highest inflation we've had in 40 years. This is all bad. Well, it can't be bad, but it can also be positive in some ways, and especially on the accumulation side. It is eventually going to help you. You have higher interest rates on safer types of accounts, so on savings accounts, on CDs and such. But on the other hand, it's higher mortgage rates. So you have to know, like, which thing are you talking about?
Yeah.
Now, I always track ice cream. I like to, A, eat ice cream, and B, it's a fun food item to track about inflation and the different ingredients, because you've got, sugar, so you've got something that's produced, and you've got dairy, you've got eggs, a lot of these component parts, and of course my favorite, chocolate, which is a different index. But you watch what happens, and it's a go-to comfort food when you're having a bad day. So it sort of meets like all my criteria for what can you watch to see, are we in a crisis or aren't we? Is it bad? Is it good? And you watch the size of the container shrink. So the price hasn't changed a lot with ice cream, but the size of the container has. And you just have to be mindful that what you thought you knew, or the headline you read, is not the whole story. Because the goal of a headline is to get you to buy the paper or the article. It's not to provide you with facts. So the facts very often are way deep in the article, but not in the headline. So lots of ways that people really can think they know something, and it turns out that they just don't, or it doesn't apply in their case at all.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. So what, you have some really good points in here that you want to, have you decided, or which questions might you want me to ask? What about sharing a few points about why your latest book is called Cooking Up Your Retirement Plan? That sounds like a good question.
Yeah. So I wrote books for women. What's the deal with retirement planning for women? And then what's the deal with Social Security for women? And they're what you would expect, actual books. You open them and there's text in there. But it occurred to me over a long time that we're making this retirement thing too hard. It's hard enough. right? Medicare, super complicated. Social Security, super complicated. Mom and dad not planning, nightmare. So I went with something new and different, which was making a cookbook that you could follow along at your pace and think about, both time and money. So everything is graphic, everything is set up so that you're creating your own secret sauce, if you will. And, I talk about things in terms of a lasagna, right? So for people who cook, can you make a lasagna? Well, most people can.
Okay,
but they make it. Thank you. They make it with their own ingredients, right? How I make mine is not how someone else makes theirs, but it's all your own. But you can't have a lasagna if you just have all the ingredients sitting on the counter, right? You got to then put them all together in the pan, bake it, and then you can serve it. And it's that idea and that concept that if you can do that, you actually can create a retirement recipe. And I just tried to make it more fun instead of making it so darn daunting. It's talk about things you want to do and not just that's too lofty. What do you want to do in retirement? Well, I don't know. Exactly what you said. You don't know what you don't know, or you don't know what to ask. So I put in columns of brainstorming ideas. Do you want a vineyard? Do you want an organic farm? Some people go, no, of course I don't want that. But it sparked something else that they do want.
Yeah.
Or someone who never thought about buying a farm, like, oh my God, wouldn't that be so fun? So it's giving them some ideas. It's the same idea when you've got company coming and you need to make dinner and you have no idea what you're going to make. What do? Well, okay, today you Google something. Google chicken dishes or shrimp dishes.
I go to the grocery store.
Right, because everything is there for you to see, right? And you can then just pick it out. It's the same thing a recipe book does, a cookbook does, that all these ideas from the pioneer woman or from Julia Child, and you just don't have to think so hard. So anyway, that's what I'd love to end on. Thanks for thinking of that question.
I love that. So where can the average Joe get that book, or where's that?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's both on Amazon, right? On Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And so you can either, Google or put in the search bar, cooking up your retirement plan, or just my name, Marcia Mantell, which is how I always have to find my books. I can never find them.
I love that. I love that. That is creative. Because, I think you hit the nail on the head. You're so intuitive. You can tell that this isn't your first rodeo in this space, because I truly believe that one of the reasons why families in my line of work, why they don't communicate or why they don't talk or why they don't facilitate their family meetings proactively instead of waiting until things have very much gone sideways, is because it's scary. There's not up until I wrote my book, there wasn't really anything out there that's like a guide of here's what you need to do. Here's your family meeting script. Here's your checklist. Here's what, there's all this noise and there's information all over the internet, but putting it all together, like assembling your lasagna, that was so brilliant. And I think that's one of the reasons why people don't think about retirement or Medicare or Social Security, because it's daunting. Way too much confusing information. And it's like, okay, so how do I apply these 17 articles I just Googled? How do I apply that to me? So the value is obviously working with a professional, because this is what we do for a living. So it's daunting to you as a family member or as a consumer, but it's not to us, because this is what we do. We're like, oh, this is how you fix that. And then it's done, and then life is good again.
For us, it's all day, every day. Right. Yeah. This is not a hobby. But it's the same thing, Annalie. I also use car engines. So can you put together a car engine?
Yeah.
I can't. Do I even care how the car engine is put together? I do not. I would never think to. I have my maintenance tire maintenance little indicators on. It's like, well, do I think I can keep driving for a while? Yeah, I think I can. When I'm scared enough, I will take it in to see BJ. Yep. I'm not going to figure out what the tire maintenance light means. I'm not sure I know how to open the hood, if I'm being really honest. I know how to put gas in my car and I know how to turn it on and it drives. I don't need to overthink this because I have this expert.
Yeah.
And when BJ calls and says you need new brakes, I say, is that a today thing, or do I need to schedule a new appointment? He goes, no, I put them in today. Great. Here's my charge card.
Yep.
It just, we can't know everything,
Yeah.
but we have to be able to have some frame upon which to hang our decisions, and
Right.
before it is too late. There's
Right.
too much
And
too late.
things change, Medicare, there's changes with Medicare in what, July, October, September, there's
Every year.
every
Yes.
year.
Oh, isn't that fun? Every
There's
year pieces change.
Long-term care things change, policies change, political things impact, healthcare and government stuff. So everything is in a constant state of change. And when you're a family caregiver, or you're in that stage where you're trying to figure out your retirement pieces and how to put that whole puzzle together, it's just everything change. Just when you think something, then something will change, and then you're like, oh, now I'm back to square one. So work smart. My grandfather used to live with us, and he's just a smart, wise man.
Yeah.
And he would say, work smarter, not harder. And to me, energy is such a finite resource,
time and energy
and time that most people value their time and energy. So wouldn't it just make sense to just work with someone who just knows how to do all this, and then you can move on with your life and have a happy day.
and I hope to keep, I think this is part of your big goal, is try to keep these families intact without killing each other, or be hating each other for the rest of their lives. Because families are tough. And when you're at their worst, we all tend to be at our worst then. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, right. And you would hope the aging process brings families together, but I'm here to tell you, if they're not communicating well to begin with, or there's Brother Tom said something stupid at Christmas 30 years ago, and that fractured the whole family. And now dad's dementia progressed and mom had a major stroke. All those family dynamics come bubbling up to the top like a volcano. And I am not kidding, because I do 85% of my clients, I have to do family mediation with them, because they just can't even get on the same page with simple little decisions, let alone feeding tubes and what are we going to do with mom and dad, or where should mom live. So the more that we can communicate, most parents don't want their legacy to be where their kids now no longer talk to them because of that aging and caregiving process. So
yeah. Wow.
That's what happens a lot of times when you don't put a plan together.
Well, it is. So if we can make it a little more fun, a little more factual and correct, and help you out,
I'm going to buy your book. I am going to buy your book. Everybody needs that book. You make an unpleasant planning thing, because plan seems to be a 4-letter word. People don't want to do it until they're forced into it. And then they wonder why they don't have good options, or they don't have what they were hoping to accomplish because they waited until it's too late. So I'm going to buy that book, because I think everybody needs to have that as a framework. And
thanks, Annalie.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Marcia, thank you for just being so awesome and so cool and so high energy, and just helping make a really complicated topic fun, exciting, and digestible.
Oh, you are so welcome. And, this is the end of the day for us. And I told you before, I'm old. So it's like, oh, I'm not feeling that energetic today. I mean, see me at 9 a.m. and I'm raring to go.
Yeah, me too.
Now
it's like, oh my God.
I know. I so appreciate you having me on, and getting to share this information with your listeners. It's important information for everybody.
It really is. Marcia Mantell. Look for her on Amazon. Google her. You are all over the internet in a good way.
I hope so. Yeah, I think so.
You are. And just, log into Amazon and get that book. I mean, it's just going to make your life easier. You'll thank your future self later.
Exactly. Thanks, Annalie.
You bet. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you for tuning in to the Care Right podcast. We hope today's discussion has provided you with valuable insights. If so, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share our podcast with others who might find it helpful. Remember, Care Right is more than just a podcast. It's a community dedicated to supporting family caregivers with comprehensive care planning, crisis management, and resources for every stage of aging. Stay connected with us for future episodes as we continue to explore essential topics in aging planning, elder care, and financial planning. Until next time, take care, plan wisely, and remember, you're not alone in your caregiving journey.